And I want to talk about this concept which I hesitantly put in my title, a research library commons. What I really want to talk about is a really fascinating symposium that I attended a few months ago called The Transformation of Academic Library Collecting. This was a symposium hosted at Harvard University, and it was in memory of a collections librarian from Harvard called Dan Hazen. And did anybody else in this room attend that meeting? Okay, Mary was there, yeah, okay, Lizanne, okay. It was a very good meeting. Sarah Thomas invited colleagues from RLUK to attend. Most of you didn't have the privilege of being the chair of RLUK, therefore you probably couldn't ask the executive director of RLUK if you could have a bit of funding to help you get there. So I think I may have been just about the only RLUK person who did attend. But I did get part of my costs met by RLUK, and on the basis, David said very clearly that I shared what I learned with you all, and a blog post was suggested. I've been too lazy to write a blog post, so I said to David, well, can I not just talk about it a little bit at the beginning of the conference? So that's really what I'm going to do, is just talk a little bit about what I found to be really quite a thought-provoking meeting. So a commons, we talk about commonses a lot. It's become one of our buzzwords in the profession. And I think we know what we mean. So we have physical commonses, we have our information commonses and our learning commonses. But increasingly I think we're using the concept, the metaphor of the commons for collaboration and collaborative activity. And Caroline's already mentioned collaboration. Collaboration, I think, runs through this conference. I think it runs through our veins, actually, as librarians. But a commons is in that metaphorical sense, I think, that libraries would recognise would be material that we hold in common for public use, and it's based obviously on the English legal definition of a commons as being common land. A commons involves the conversion of material essentially from private into public hands, and therefore a role as for whoever runs the commons as a custodian. It requires a legal framework, it requires a budget, it requires a purchaser, all of which are things that libraries can provide. A commons is established through the will of a particular community to have something that they hold in common, and it operates on the basis of trust. And I think if there are two sort of themes that I want to come through this presentation, they are collaboration and trust. So the community trusts the provider of the commons to sustain the offer, and the provider trusts the community to treat the commons with respect. Now those of us, and there will be some of you in the audience who run buildings that are commonses, and whether you always get the respect for those that you might want from their users, I'm not sure. But a library is essentially a commons. And I want to suggest that when we talk about above campus activity and collaborative activity above the campus, we potentially could call these services a commons for research libraries. Green challenge. We use green as well in many contexts, and you might think I'm talking about green open access or something to do with ecology. But actually I'm talking about our colleague Robin, because I presented a slide at a meeting that Robin hosted in work about a year and a half ago, I think, about international activities at scale, how to organise shared activities at international scale. And it was, in a way, it was a sort of precursor to the creation of a group that we have created now, an international group called IARLA, the International Alliance of Research Library Associations. And IARLA is, I'm happy to say, at least in part, represented here today. Again, we had a meeting yesterday. So IARLA got going this time last year. But in this slide that I presented at work, when I was sort of suggesting the idea that we create something like this, I said that what IARLA should be about is it should find a statement of shared principles. It should be something that creates a set of shared principles for research libraries to buy into on an international level. And I made that remark quite airily, and Robin said to me afterwards, well, tell me what those principles are. So Robin is one of these testing colleagues that Caroline has mentioned, and of course I just thought they must be self-evident, but clearly they're not. And in fact the IARLA group that we had meeting yesterday was talking actually about doing just this and arriving at a set of shared principles as a piece of work that we hope to do over the next few months. But I also talked about the concept of the optimised research library. What do we mean when we say a research library is a good research library? How do we know we're a good research library? What are the service components that would be part of that? What international infrastructure and collaborative machinery would need to be in place to make research libraries work optimally? What legal framework would have to be in place? What would be the functional interoperability? And then I mentioned the IARLA, although I think I had a different acronym for it back then. Some kind of a policy body with some sort of leverage, which is where we're seeking to get to. I also presented this slide. Those of you who heard me speak at any events over the last few years probably think I can only give one presentation, and it's kind of true, really. So this one talks about research library responsibility, and the horizontal arrow really represents what we do institutionally on our campuses as directors and managers of library services. So the stuff that we all now recognise that are really important: study environments, how libraries have reinvented themselves as managers of study space in the last few years, the business of the balance between digital printed texts, our store services, chat services, discovery services, library brand and reach, all that we do now with communications and marketing, management of our research profile, research impact. All of that is stuff we do in campus at the local level. But there is a level above, a global level, or at least a scalar level of some sort. We sometimes have to figure out what the appropriate scale is, where we do above campus activity. We have a collaboration agenda, talk about a digitised corpus of materials, global catalogue, shared print work, preservation, a preservation layer, an open access layer, a data layer. And I just added, having been to the Harvard meeting that I mentioned a few months ago, collection development. Can we do collection development above the line? I think is a challenge that I would want us to consider. And I quoted John Price-Wilkin when I created this slide, because I'm interested in his notion of radical collaboration. Some of a library's work can naturally be done more efficiently in a shared networked context. Other work is best done locally. The best example of appropriately local work is the creation and management of spaces. The best example of an activity that can be done most appropriately in a networked context is curation. And then the clincher: a library's collection is not owned solely by the library, but by the society or culture that has collected it and put it in the library in the first place. Quite a contentious statement, a statement that implies surrender of ownership of material to the common good, the idea that our collections can be part of a commons, part of that common infrastructure. But a very interesting one, and I think as we move forward towards shared print infrastructures and collective collection analysis, this is something that we need to think about, the implications of this. So this was the symposium that I attended. Dan Hazen died in 2015, at the age of 68. Clearly a big thinker in the academic library world, the American academic library world, and somebody who occupied that kind of fairly rarefied role of being a collections development person. He had a particular role for Latin American materials at Harvard, but he thought much more widely than just in that disciplinary area. And American libraries in particular, I think the Ivy League universities tended to have people like Dan, at least at one time. Whether they still have them is another question. Reading the material ahead of the symposium and listening to what was said at the meeting reminded me of somebody else who sadly also is no longer around, but who occupied a similar role at Cornell University. And this was somebody called Ross Atkinson, who also died a few years before Dan. But both Ross Atkinson, I think, and Dan Hazen could be considered privileged thinkers in our profession. They were privileged because of the libraries they worked in. To work in a place like Cornell or Harvard, which at one time those libraries attempted to collect everything, gave them a perspective that few of us have anymore. So Ross Atkinson ran a conference a few years ago and wrote quite a lot. And again, I think some of what he wrote is worth thinking about at the moment for the challenges we face. With respect to digital information, the most serious challenge universities and the research libraries face is how to reappropriate the responsibility for the preservation of key scholarly objects that are now maintained primarily or exclusively on the servers of publishers and other vendors throughout the world. That's a problem that we haven't cracked. Technical, economic, and even political impediments can jeopardise continued access to such objects, despite the best intentions and commitments of publishers and vendors. It's essential, therefore, that research libraries reassume full responsibility for archiving such scholarly materials for the long term. It's essential that research libraries divide among themselves responsibilities for archiving low-use print material. Now, these are still very much live issues. They're still issues that we face when we talk about shared print, collective collection, collective analysis of our collections. The kind of work we're now doing with OCLC, with Greenglass and so on, is partly because we need to address these questions. So, 12 years on, these questions are still very vital. And Dan Hazen, I would suggest, is another privileged thinker. And these are comments, these are points, actually, that he raised in an article he wrote back in 2000. And quite interesting, just a little bit of history. That in the 1950s to the 70s, certainly in America, bibliographers ruled the roost in their libraries. They took over from faculty. So we sometimes think in the UK, because very often it's faculty, it's academics who do the selection, that it's very different in the States. But it didn't used to be. But bibliographers really came into their own from the 50s onwards. Dan Hazen wrote an article called Twilight of the Gods. So bibliographers were being likened to the gods. They took over from faculty as disciplinary literatures became a specialism in itself. A little bit like the situation we now face, I think, with research data, where we're thinking about how understanding research data across its different disciplinary domains is a specialism, and maybe that specialism is something that we should have in the library. Cold War fears led to widespread global acquisitions policies. So libraries like Harvard and Cornell and other big libraries were going out collecting as much as they could from countries where they thought they might not actually be able to have access in a few years' time. Collections, cooperation and interlibrary loan were rudimentary back then. They've advanced a lot. So the emphasis was on local holdings. By the mid-1980s, finances were constrained. This was the twilight of the gods. This period was coming to an end. Publication by then was a deluge. Aggressive publisher pricing had entered the picture, and it was spiriting away ever larger proportions of the acquisitions budgets. And collection development became an exercise in managing poverty rather than managing plenty, which is what it had been for that sort of 2 or 3 privileged decades. So interesting historical perspective, I think. Then we go back to the notion of the commons and what we mean by a commons. And we have this, some of you will have heard, if you're economists, you'll have heard about the tragedy of the commons, a phrase that was coined in 1968. The behaviour of individuals acting rationally in their own self-interest and maximising their own consumption of a public resource to the detriment of others. The individual economic model does not scale upwards. What is good for the individual is not necessarily for the good of the whole. That was a phrase coined back in 1968 by Garrett Hardin, somewhat flies in the face of Adam Smith, but it's an interesting notion, the tragedy of the commons. And the first time I've heard it applied to the in the library context was in 2003, when somebody called Philip Davis talked about the big deal. So we had the big deals by 2003, not necessarily the collective big deal. These were individual big deals that libraries were entering into with individual publishers, where back then the researchers from a particular study reported that every $1 increase in the price of a personal subscription resulted in a $1.29 increase in the price of a library subscription. All other variables held constant. Their work confirmed that individuals cancelling their own personal subscriptions resulted in higher library costs, in essence confirming a tragedy of the commons. So the tragedy of the commons afflicted our world back then in 2003, and the big deal and the publishers were really the reason for it, because of course they learned how to do their pricing in such a way that they could always stay one step ahead of the market, if you like, of a true market. But I think what Dan Hazen pointed to was something that I would call a tragedy of the research library commons. And this is, he didn't call it that, but it seems to me that from writings that we were presented with at the symposium, you could certainly infer this. He started to worry about the fact that library collections were all beginning to look alike. We were beyond the twilight of the gods. Acquisitions was becoming more and more of a struggle. So libraries tended to go for easy acquisitions, readily identified material, easy to acquire, particularly with big deals, of course, and digital aggregations of content. And we were all buying the same stuff. This was leading to too many similar collections and too much uncollected material. So we were taking the easy path, but it meant that we were ignoring a lot of material and nobody was collecting it. And so this removed the need for specialist bibliographers, because we didn't have we weren't doing the collecting that we used to do when we had specialist bibliographers to make the choices for us. But of course, when financial hardship arrived, and it did arrive in 2008, and actually in 2009, Dan Hazen wrote a paper called Rethinking Collections in the Harvard College Library, a policy framework for straitened times and beyond. And I think those straitened times persist. When Harvard had to adjust to the fact its endowment had shrunk, it couldn't afford to spend as much any longer on collections. So when financial hardship arrives, the temptation is for everybody to retrench together. And Susan Gibbons was at the meeting that we attended a few months ago, and she made the point, and she also arguably is a privileged thinker, being at Yale. Her comment was, if this happens again, if we have another crash, we all step back at once, and that ruins our ecology, our above-campus ecology, our collections, our collective collection, because we are all, therefore, retrenching to the easy stuff, if you like, and nobody's paying attention to the stuff that should be being collected for the benefit of us all. And the point now, I think, is that with collective action, collaborative action, this should be avoidable by our own efforts if we can join up. And Dan Hazen said back then in 2009, a new Harvard collections policy will include explicit interdependence with other institutions. Whether it does or not, I don't know, but certainly we know that there are some initiatives now happening in the States for collective collecting and collaborative collection development. Dan Hazen wrote, cooperative efforts, international, national, regional and local, can at once increase efficiencies around everyone's need for duplicative materials and also maximise the collection's reach of those libraries that are capable of pursuing scarce or unique resources. Cooperative activities will become increasingly central to library programmes and strategies. In other words, this is how we can maximise the potential of the commons. But there's another thing going on, of course, which is publishers and the way publishers are pricing the information that we require, particularly the journal information that we buy in large bundles. And again, if you look at the economic argument here, what we're getting is essentially the tragedy of the commons, self-interested publishers acting rationally, and let's not forget, Elsevier works entirely rationally, creating artificial scarcity. So stuff becomes scarce simply because it's put beyond our reach price-wise, and restricted manipulations of the digital marketplace. And how do we deal with that? I think, again, conscious collaboration has to be the answer. We have to work together as a community consciously to take on this ransack of the commons. And we are now talking more and more about Plan B. We've been talking about it in RLUK for some time. Plan B essentially is a methodology for the post-collective big deal world. Can we develop an approach, a shared approach to managing our collections such that we are no longer going to be subject to this very problematic approach to pricing from particular publishers? So we now talk about taking back control, about post-cancellation access, about document delivery, about green open access. There are a number of strategies where if we work collectively, we can find means to get around the being held to ransom by particular publishers. And I think we're talking more and more about that. I think there's quite a lot of optimism coming along. So we need to talk about this line and about governance above and below the line. Again, Dan Hazen, academic libraries must be aligned with and accountable to their parent institutions. So we all work, most of us work for universities. We have to toe the line within our universities. Yet information is becoming more diffuse and library activities across the board are ever more cooperative in nature and expansive in scope. Closely consultative processes within each campus will remain essential but may no longer be sufficient. Universities and libraries must devise models for governance that both ensure local accountability and encourage cooperative activities. And many of us, when we're talking to our, in my case, principals or vice principals, and many will talk to pro-vice chancellors and vice chancellors, talk about our responsibility above the line, our responsibility to the collective, the collaborative library community, the research library community. It's quite a difficult thing to do. It's something that might not necessarily get a sympathetic hearing. We're doing it at the moment with the UK Scholarly Communications Licence. That's quite an interesting example, I think, where we are now starting to say we think we should be part of this national and potentially international endeavour. But it's a tough one to get across, and yet I think if we do it together, we can make some headway. So can we imagine an optimised research library? Can we generalise from the privileged perspective of these Ivy League institutions back in the 50s to the mid-80s, in the days when they inhabited a pre-crash, pre-big deal world? And can we think about whether we can create Dan Hazen's and Ross Atkinson's collectively that we can use to guide us as we do collecting in a collaborative way? We need trustedness to make this work. And when we write our collections development policies, we very often talk about trust in the context of disposing of materials. So we don't like to tell our academics that we would dispose of material without being very thoughtful about it. So we talk about trusted networks, and material will disappear from our stacks or from our stores, but they will go into some kind of trusted repository, some trusted network. But do we really know what we mean by that trust? And how honest are we being about it? And yet trust is essential. If we're going to do things collaboratively, we need to be able to trust that bigger world above the line. Whom do we already trust? Do we trust WorldCat? I think most of us do. Do we trust Hattie? We're going to hear from Hattie Trust later this afternoon. Portico, a UK Research Reserve. I think that was a very tangible example of a trusted infrastructure within the UK. A national digital library, do we put our trust in that? Probably not yet, in the UK at least. A regional collective collection, how much trust does that win from us? Trust is essential. We can't necessarily create trust, but we can certainly try. And trust, we only know that trust exists when people act upon it. And HE, as we know, is a very conservative world. People will not take a step unless they're absolutely convinced that this is a sensible step to take. One of the reasons why we do find talking about collaborative collection management quite difficult. But I think we need to think about this commons and how we create it. Focus on this line between the local and the global. Think about how we acknowledge it and realise it in our own institutions. We already collaborate on shared bibliographic data quite easily, but we now need to collaborate in more challenging areas around collection development, a shared approach to maximising our acquisitions budgets. So some examples, collective collection work would be an example where the appropriate scale to do this kind of commons development would be regional or national. Plan B work is very much national as things stand. But again, we could think about Plan B work moving up to an international scale. Scholarly Communications Licence, that's national for us at the moment in the UK, but again, there are reasons why it might become a more international endeavour. So I think we need to think more about it. And just a question at the bottom there, when we are doing things in our own institutions, I think we need more and more to ask ourselves, what do we do poorly or short-sightedly if we only do it here and for ourselves? Whom do we let down by focusing too much on our own institutional needs and not thinking about the needs of the wider community? So I'm going to finish on a final quotation. I'm sorry I've been quoting so much, but these people write so much better and more powerfully than I could that it's best just to quote them sometimes. So Dan Hazen, again in 2009, with a few exceptions such as consciously duplicated core materials, reserve readings and high-use recreational works, research libraries have sought to build enduring collections of record. Carefully selected individual items in their aggregate comprise definitive collections for the associated topics and fields. Libraries then care for these assemblages so that they will be permanently available. Creating and stewarding this patrimony constitutes a vocation of broad cultural consequence. I think that final sentence is absolutely exquisite and should give us all hope for the jobs that we do. So, thank you very much.